In Colombia, a criminal kingpin is enjoying himself with a woman in a jacuzzi when, out of nowhere, a sniper's bullet strikes him down, killing him instantly in the water. Meanwhile, in Virginia, a former Marine is holed up in a motel, drinking heavily. He stares at old photos of his squad, haunted by memories of those who didn't make it back. Burdened by grief and the lasting trauma of war, he eventually picks up a gun, deciding to end his own life. Days later, a funeral is held in his honor. Master Sergeant Brandon, one of his former squad mates, mourns his friend and struggles to understand how someone so legendary could come to such a tragic end. Major Miller, another comrade, gently reminds him that their line of work can deeply scar the mind. The thought lingers with Brandon. Could the same thing eventually happen to him? Miller has a new mission for Brandon in Colombia, supporting the DEA on a high-stakes operation. But Brandon declines. He's still dealing with his grief. Miller doesn't give him much choice, though, simply telling him the car is already waiting to take him to the agency's private jet. A few hours later, Brandon lands in Bogota. His driver can't stop gushing about him. Brandon is famous for his stellar record as an elite sniper. When they arrive at the National Police headquarters, Brandon meets Santiago, a Colombian officer assigned as his observer, and Captain Garza, who serves as the liaison between the Colombian police and the US DEA. Then comes Master Gunnery, Sergeant Beckett, Brandon's father. The two are glad to see each other after so long, but out of respect for protocol, they continue to address each other by rank. The briefing begins. Brandon is told that his target is Morales, the head of a powerful cartel in Colombia. Morales controls 60% of the drug smuggling routes heading to the US and is notorious for recruiting street kids and turning them into soldiers. His network is almost untraceable, and no one has seen him in a decade, until now. Recently, all of Morales' competitors have turned up dead, including the man in the jacuzzi. The precision of that hit suggests the shooter is ex-military, likely hired by Morales to eliminate his enemies. Intel suggests Morales will soon be at his private farm. The team wants Brandon as backup during the raid, but Brandon refuses. He doesn't like being treated as a babysitter. Tension rises, and just as the argument heats up, DEA agent Kate storms in, furious that the meeting started without her. After all, this is her operation. She lays out the intel on the farm and bluntly asks if Brandon is going to take the mission seriously. Brandon admits he hates assignments like this, but assures her he'll follow orders. The following day, a team of DEA agents under Kate's command joins forces with Garza's police officers as they close in on the farm. At the same time, Brandon remains positioned in the forest alongside Santiago, lying low and out of sight. Back at headquarters, Beckett keeps an eye on the live surveillance feed, joined by Homeland Security's Agent Sampson, who voices his concern that both Beckett and Kate may be wasting manpower and resources based on intelligence that hasn't been fully validated. The strike team halts their vehicles at a safe range, then continues on foot, moving quietly and using the trees as natural cover while waiting for the green light. Once Beckett gives the order to proceed, the agents storm the building and break through the front door, only to trigger a trap that causes the entire structure to erupt in a violent explosion. Officers stationed at the rear are able to survive the blast, but everyone leading the charge is killed, except for Garza, who takes a gunshot to the leg from Morales' sniper. Taking shelter behind a vehicle parked on the property, Kate watches the chaos unfold and makes a snap decision to reach Garza and try to pull him to safety. But just as she lifts him up, the sniper takes a second shot, hitting Garza fatally and killing him on the spot. That very shot gives Brandon enough of a clue to pinpoint the sniper's location. He quickly returns fire, but the enemy narrowly avoids the bullet and vanishes before Brandon can get another shot off. Later, back at the station, Agent Sampson, visibly enraged, demands a full explanation for the operation's failure. During their debrief, the team agrees that someone within the police ranks must be leaking intel. Kate and Brandon also raise an important point. The sniper intentionally held his fire, waiting for Kate to expose herself, rather than immediately finishing off Garza. This strongly suggests that Kate had been the intended target all along, and the injury to Garza was just a calculated trap. The only reason the second shot missed was because Kate had inadvertently moved Garza into the sniper's line of fire. Sampson insists that the entire mission should be shut down, but Kate refuses to walk away without a proper fight. The argument drags on until Brandon steps in with a proposal. Give the team 48 hours to locate the sniper. If they fail, they'll agree to withdraw. Samson reluctantly accepts the deal. Once the meeting ends, Beckett pulls Brandon aside and warns him that the sniper likely identified him during their brief exchange, meaning he needs to stay on high alert from now on. Afterward, Brandon heads to the DEA safe house located in Las Cruces, where he will stay during his time in Colombia. Despite reassurances from the other agents that the building is heavily secured, Brandon remains skeptical, believing that any skilled marksman could still manage to line up a clear shot into the rooms. Meanwhile, El Diablo, the sniper hired by Morales, is spending time with his girlfriend when his phone rings. The caller informs him that Kate and Brandon are now staying at the DEA safe house. After failing to eliminate his targets the first time, El Diablo now sees an opportunity to correct his mistake. Meanwhile, Brandon is browsing online, reading an article about the recent death of his friend. The piece discusses a growing crisis within the military, highlighting how many soldiers leave the service burdened by severe psychological trauma. His focus is interrupted when Kate enters the room, expressing gratitude for the way he backed her during the previous meeting. She goes on to confess that she's never lost a man under her command before, and she's finding it hard to cope. She also mentions that something about the way Garza was shot felt off to her. Brandon agrees, noting that the shot the sniper pulled off shouldn't have been physically possible under normal ballistic conditions. Kate clarifies that Morales is her main target, not the sniper, but Brandon warns her that being so narrowly focused has already cost lives. Hurt by his words, Kate quickly leaves the room. Once inside the elevator, she breaks down in tears. Garza was a close friend, and she's weighed down by guilt over his death. As Brandon continues digging through research on advanced ammunition and checks in with Santiago's watch shift over the radio, Kate heads to a busy bar for a drink. There, she's forced to get physical with a man who crosses the line by touching her inappropriately. After handling the situation, she goes to meet with Carlos, a priest respected in the community for his tireless work with the underprivileged. Carlos tells Kate he doesn't believe she can win against someone as ruthless and powerful as Morales, and suggests she should walk away. But Kate is determined to stay in the fight, so Carlos shares what little information he has. The sniper's name is El Diablo, and since he's been contracted by Morales, it's likely he knows where Morales is hiding. Before they part ways, Carlos promises to reach out to Kate if he uncovers anything else. Back at the safe house, Santiago urgently contacts Brandon after spotting something suspicious. Brandon races to the rooftop with his rifle and confirms Santiago's instincts. There's a sniper lying in wait at a distance. Now both Brandon and El Diablo are locked in a tense standoff, each one watching and waiting for the other to make the first move. Brandon takes the initiative and fires the opening shot, but El Diablo narrowly avoids it and immediately returns fire. Brandon ducks behind a wall and chooses to stay out of sight, hoping that the enemy will assume he's been hit. The following morning, the team retrieves the sniper's bullet and arranges a video call with Major Miller to get his insight. Miller identifies the round as a smart bullet, equipped with laser-guided technology that allows for real-time control of its trajectory. Major Miller notes that if the rounds themselves are steering through the air, El Diablo may not be a former soldier, or even a skilled marksman at all. The smart bullets could be doing the heavy lifting. He also echoes Brandon's complaint that the current safe house is anything but safe. Samson ends a video call by promising to secure better lodgings through a CIA contact. Elsewhere, Morales relaxes inside his own hideout, playing games with a cluster of young recruits. He preaches a harsh brand of loyalty, pushing them to defend what's theirs through fear rather than respect. When Morales later steps into his office to phone El Diablo, he finds the sniper already seated in his chair. El Diablo demands payment for the rivals he has eliminated, but Morales refuses, arguing the contract isn't fulfilled. Kate and Brandon are still breathing. He kicks the sharpshooter out, declaring he no longer needs him. At dawn, Kate and Brandon ride toward a newly arranged safe house. During the drive, Carlos calls Kate to say he's discovered El Diablo has a girlfriend. He texts her the address, warning that the area is under Morales' control. Kate puts down the phone and tells Brandon she's figured out his real motive. He isn't invested in the case itself. He only wants to meet the sniper, who's firing rounds more advanced than his own skill set. Brandon concedes the point, but before the conversation can continue, a truck slams into their vehicle. Gunmen loyal to Morales spill out and open fire. Brandon and the police escort return shots while Kate scrambles for cover. Every attacker is ultimately neutralized, but Santiago is killed in the exchange. Brandon notices Kate is missing and finds her phone on the seat, the screen still showing the address Carlos sent. Kate reaches the seedy neighborhood moments later and immediately senses multiple spotters watching her. She knocks on the indicated door, which is answered by Morales' girlfriend, Maria. The moment Kate flashes her badge, Maria tries to slam the door. Kate blocks it, drawing the attention of nearby thugs, and Maria shoves her outside so the men can grab Kate. A brawl erupts. Kate lands several solid blows, but is soon overpowered and forced against a wall. As the men line up to assault her, Brandon arrives and opens fire, dropping several attackers. One assailant flees on a stolen motorcycle, and Kate succeeds in apprehending the last remaining thug. Just as Kate is about to knock out the last remaining thug, Maria suddenly intervenes, forcing Kate to back off by pointing a gun at her. Fortunately, Brandon sneaks up behind Maria and catches her off guard, giving Kate the perfect opening to disarm her. In the scuffle, Kate also snatches the locket from Maria's neck. Inside, there's a photo of Maria with El Diablo. Brandon quickly takes a picture of the locket and sends it to his father so they can run the image through facial recognition. He also informs Beckett that they were ambushed earlier, which confirms their suspicion. Someone is still feeding information to Morales. Until they can identify the mole, Brandon and Kate decide to disappear to a new location, without even telling Beckett where they're going. Back at headquarters, Samson is visibly frustrated by how the mission is unfolding and accuses Beckett of giving Brandon too much authority over the operation. Beckett, however, chooses to ignore the criticism. Meanwhile, Kate brings Brandon to the neighborhood where she grew up, asking Father Carlos to shelter them for a while. Carlos isn't surprised to hear that Morales has infiltrated the police. He explains that Morales has ties to influential people as well as street-level criminals who look up to him. Kate realizes that shaking up Morales' network might force him out of hiding, and Carlos agrees to pass along a few names connected to the cartel. Over the next several days, bodies begin turning up across the city. Each victim is linked to Morales, including one of his bankers. Brandon is the one behind these kills, systematically taking out everyone Carlos identified. Major Miller eventually contacts Beckett to report that Brandon is operating off the grid and eliminating targets on his own. But Beckett has no idea where his son is hiding. One evening, Carlos offers Brandon a quiet moment to talk. Brandon opens up about the Marine who died before this mission began. He's haunted by the thought of ending up the same way. Carlos tells him that the only way to avoid that path is by forgiving himself for the things he's done and the pain he carries. Elsewhere, Morales finally steps out of his compound, but only to track down El Diablo at Maria's home. Furious about losing so many men, he pays El Diablo everything he owes him in one go. He then promises an even bigger payday if El Diablo succeeds in taking Brandon out. Not long after, Samson and Beckett brief Miller with new intelligence about El Diablo. His real name is Enrique, and he used to serve as a sniper in a military defense unit. He crossed into Colombia from Venezuela 9 months earlier, but all records of him vanished after the border. Samson insists that Miller pull both Brandon and Kate out of the mission, but Miller refuses, arguing that the two of them have done more for the operation than anyone else. Meanwhile, El Diablo bribes a local informant to learn the location of Brandon and Kate's current hideout. That's how he finds out about Father Carlos. Later that night, Kate receives a cryptic message from Carlos, asking her to meet him at the town plaza at 10 p.m. When she tries to call him, he doesn't pick up. Realizing the message is clearly a setup, Kate and Brandon quietly slip into a building across from the plaza. From there, they wait in hiding, watching for any sign that El Diablo might be nearby. A few hours later, a truck pulls up by the park, and Kate instantly recognizes the men getting out. They're the same thugs from Maria's neighborhood. The group does something behind the vehicle, then drives off. Once the truck clears out, Kate and Brandon are stunned to see that Carlos has been tied to a tree in the park. Kate prepares to rush out and rescue him, but Brandon stops her, warning that this is exactly the kind of trap El Diablo would set. Brandon tries to free Carlos by shooting the rope, but his first shot only grazes it, giving away their position. Fortunately, his second bullet severs the rope just before El Diablo opens fire. Kate and Brandon flee under fire, but in a fit of rage, El Diablo shoots Carlos out of spite. The following day, the entire town comes together to mourn the priest. Kate and Brandon attend the funeral, standing quietly among the crowd. From the back, Brandon spots the man who had escaped on a motorcycle days earlier. He follows him through several streets and eventually manages to catch him. At first, the man acts tough, but when Brandon reminds him that Morales murdered the town's beloved priest, the thug breaks down in tears. Carlos had once helped him when he was living on the streets. After Brandon promises him protection under the DEA's witness program, the man agrees to give up the location of Morales' hideout. With the address in hand, Samson's team quickly locates and arrests Morales. He is to be transferred to Miami, where he'll face trial in a U.S. federal court. But Brandon is convinced that El Diablo will try to silence Morales before he can testify, and he's right. A few days later, El Diablo arrives in the United States using a very convincing fake passport. He passes through customs without issue, then connects with his bullet supplier, who has already left the car waiting for him, fully stocked with new weapons. At the Homestead Air Reserve Base in Florida, Brandon, Kate, and Beckett watch Morales arrive aboard a federal helicopter. The three of them meet with Miller to prepare a strategy to protect the convoy, knowing full well that El Diablo will attempt an ambush during the transport to Miami. Miller also reveals troubling news. The specialized bullets used by El Diablo have been disappearing from the DEA's own storage, suggesting that the mole wasn't in the Colombian police, it's someone inside their own agency. When Samson arrives to help organize the transport, Brandon lays out the plan. The team will escort a decoy vehicle carrying a fake Morales with a hood over his head, baiting El Diablo into revealing himself. Meanwhile, the real Morales will travel in a separate van disguised as a laundry service vehicle. While the convoy hits the road, Brandon, Kate, Miller, and Samson take up a position on a rooftop, ready to intercept El Diablo. Outside the base, a criminal crew is already lying in wait. To everyone's surprise, the convoy rolls on without incident. The gang cars don't spring into action until the laundry van decoy appears, almost as if they'd known about the switch from the start. Clearly, the mole had tipped them off, hoping to keep Morales from naming names. El Diablo also waits for that same van. The moment it comes into view, he fires a round that forces the driver to a halt. The thugs pile out of their vehicles and pour bullets into the immobilized target. Miller answers with precise counterfire, dropping every one of them. Seeing his hired muscle wiped out, El Diablo takes another shot to make certain the passengers inside are finished. The van erupts in flame, exactly the opening Brandon needs. He locks on El Diablo's position, squeezes the trigger, and this time the notorious sniper goes down for good. The convoy presses on toward Miami, where the real twist is revealed. The man under the hood was Morales all along, and the laundry van had been the true decoy. In fact, it was completely empty, steered remotely from a control rig. Once the ruse is exposed, Kate, Miller, and Brandon pivot on Samson and place him under arrest. He was the inside source feeding intel to both Morales and El Diablo. Samson tries for denial, but Miller's tech team has already cloned his phone. The only thing they still needed was to catch him in the act, since the stored texts used code names. Cornered, Samson finally confesses. He believed working with Morales was their best shot at stopping a potential atomic threat. Furious that so many lives were lost for that rationale, Kate decks Samson for Garza and Father Carlos. With the traitor in cuffs, Miller heads back to Washington. Beckett, having had all the action he can stand, announces it's time to retire. Father and son share a heartfelt hug before parting ways. As he leaves, Beckett notes that Brandon and Kate make a solid team. Brandon, smiling, concedes that playing babysitter for the DEA might not be such a bad gig after all.